The jellyfish-like alien globules oozed menace as they oozed down the corridor of their poorly lit starship. Newbie accidentally oozed into the back of his commander, and they both jiggled to the floor awkwardly. When will they improve the lighting in this corridor? Newbie wondered, his thoughts transmitting telepathically through his upper antennae to the large commander, who did not care. Commander Glooby struggled to right himself once more. After doing so, he looked much the same as when he was lying on his side, owing to his oozing and indefinite form. Just watch where you are going, he ordered the smaller globule. That is just my point. I can't, Newbie complained through his wiggling antennae to Commander Glooby, who still did not care. You are certain your scouting report is accurate? Glooby asked, changing the subject to something of importance. Of course, Newbie thought back with irritation. You have already asked me 977 times, and now I have asked you 978 times, Glooby thought back with greater irritation. I am about to communicate our battle plans to the Emperor, and misinformation makes him most irritable indeed. My report will satisfy him fully, I assure you, Newbie answered, as they slithered like snails through the next passage, pushing through the gelatinous door that reshaped itself behind them with a rubbery snap after they entered. They continued to slide across the enormous floor within, where their entire legion of military advisors perched along the curved walls surrounding them, their antennae quaking with obvious impatience. As Glooby and Newbie glided quickly to the center of the oval court, a hush fell over the minds of the assembly. All eyes and antennae turned toward the front of the room, where a much larger gelatinous opening had started to quiver. Through it came a monstrously large, tar-colored creature, shaped with the same shapelessness as the other aliens, but in monstrous proportion, and colored like tar. It burst through the gelatinous seal, letting it snap shut behind him as his antennae telepathically frowned at the crowd. The supreme leader, Emperor Nono, had arrived. Now that's a dramatic entrance, Newbie thought aloud. Quiet, Commander Glooby thought louder. The humongous Emperor Nono ignored the mental outburst, choosing instead to ooze with dignity and grace toward the commander and his lead scout. Glooby and Newbie bowed in deference by flattening themselves into puddles. Then they resumed their upright shape, wiggling in the customary salute. Emperor Nono jiggled back at them as acknowledgement. Then he greeted each of them in their native language. Glib glob glooby, nib nob newbie. Na na na, no no, the two scouts answered, their bodies gyrating in an ecstatic salute. Emperor Nono regarded them both, satisfied with their jiggles of respect. You have news to report? He urged, communicating through his raised antennae. We would not be here otherwise, Newbie thought back, because that would be irritating. Silence, Commander Glooby ordered. Your report, Emperor Nono urged. Glooby and Newbie rose proudly, sitting taller and sticking their bellies out as far as possible as a sign of their superior intellect. The planet's inhabitants are weak, Glooby responded, shaking his belly happily. Feeble, primitive. They're stupid, Newbie cut in, too excited to contain himself. Emperor Nono flashed angry antennae at Newbie, warning him not to interrupt. Newbie's form slunk down at the rebuke. They have no military capabilities of consequence, Glooby went on. They still use propulsion weapons. The fools, nothing but guns and explosives. Dangerous, but hardly a threat. Hardly a threat to Commander Nono and the mighty race of the giblets, Newbie burst out again. Silence, you pile of goop, Emperor Nono's thoughts growled. Glooby and the commander stared angrily at Newbie, who nearly flattened himself to the floor. Newbie deferred to his commander. My apologies, you were saying. Glooby mentally cleared his throat for the others to sense, then continued. The planet possesses various natural ores, many of which its inhabitants have not yet discovered. The imbeciles, those moonheads, Newbie thought quietly. Glooby sighed and went on, ignoring the uninvited thought. The ores are buried beneath the planet's surface. Properly utilized, they will advance our armies beyond even that of the Arturi race. Commander Nono's outer skin sagged slightly with satisfaction. Over millennia, their race had conquered planets throughout the universe, growing in strength and numbers, but they had yet to halt the progress of their greatest interplanetary rivals, the Arturis, who, problematically, were also bent on intergalactic conquest. To imagine, he thought to both of them, that once and for all, the giblets could block the Arturis. He wiggled his tentacles in deep thought. Fearful of looking foolish, Glooby and Newbie did the same. What of the planet's inhabitants? Nono wondered. Insignificant, Glooby assured him. They are small and underdeveloped. Nothing like the power of the giblets, Newbie exclaimed again. Shut up, Nono ordered, still wiggling in thought. Continue, he directed Glooby. Glooby hummed a spiteful little victory song in his head for both of them to hear before proceeding with his report, while Newbie grumbled to himself. The inhabitants, those fools, would easily be defeated by the galaxy's weakest race. Their technological understanding is at an elementary level. They offer no benefit as slaves. I recommend obliteration. Destroy the morons! Newbie burst out again. Emperor Nono cast a harsh glare at him, Emperor Nono cast a harsh glare at him, issuing a telepathic electrical burst from his antennae. Newbie's outer skin began to shrivel as he cried out in pain. The Emperor finally released him, watching Newbie struggle to compose himself and his wrinkled outer shell. Keep your place, Emperor Nono warned him. Remember who wears the big antennae. He nodded again to Glooby. Glooby smirked inwardly, allowing his smug thought to be outwardly perceived by everyone. We can remove them from the planet's surface in a few short cycles, then mine their resources and establish a new outpost there. We will be well situated. This is the only inhabited planet in this region. Emperor Nono's jellyfish-shaped torso rose and fell again, exceedingly pleased. And how shall we classify this new outpost? He asked. If I may, Newbie offered. The Emperor signaled his permission. The planet's current inhabitants call it Earth. He looked about the great hall for some reaction, but there was none. Emperor Nono looked about the room as well to determine why Newbie was looking about, but he found no reason. Very well. Go occupy this Earth and report back tomorrow after lunch. Yes, Emperor Nono, Glooby said with a jiggly salute. Yes, Emperor Nono, Newbie agreed, jiggling in turn. We will go now to destroy the planet of Earth. The Emperor wrinkled his body in confusion. Why do you keep saying the planet's name so dramatically, as if it is different from every other planet we have conquered? I don't know, Newbie said. I think it just has a nice ring to it. Earth. The Emperor continued to stare at Newbie as though he was out of his mind. Glooby would have agreed. We are off now, Emperor Nono. Yes, Newbie said. Off to destroy Earth. Oh, shut up and get going, Glooby thought impatiently. The jellyfish-shaped cruiser shot away from the giblet destroyer, which continued orbiting the sun to hide its position from their targeted planet. The darting cruiser's rubbery supports trailed behind its bubble-shaped head, but they would soon spring out in all directions to land on the surface of the primitive planet called Earth. Similar cruisers waited alongside the destroyer, like giant boils across the smooth circular torso of a majestic whale. Once the great Emperor Nono gave the order, the boils would erupt from the galactic whale and strafe the planet's surface. Glooby grinned to himself, thinking that the result would be rather messy. Newbie mentally agreed, grinning back. They'll never know what obliterated them, those muffin heads, he thought to Glooby. Standard attack procedure dictated a time of strategy for the commander, based on a final survey with his lead scout. Commander Glooby would investigate the planet, approaching from its dark side, to confirm Newbie's information and plot a systematic assault. But according to Newbie's study, the planet's inhabitants were so primitive and helpless that the oncoming giblet invasion could not be classified as anything less than a slaughter. We may attack at their weakest points first, Newbie suggested, his thoughts penetrating the silence of space around them. This will show you their inability to defend themselves. In the face of death or even harm, the inhabitants flee, hoping only to escape. You have seen this? Commander Glooby questioned, outraged. You were to make no commitment of force. You are only a wabba wabba, Newbie burst. The commander's antennae rose sharply with indignance. How dare you curse at me? I know my duties. Newbie snapped back telepathically, silencing any further hostile thoughts. I merely observed their own violence against one another. Glooby communicated his bewilderment to the scout. They are not united, Newbie insisted, so they remain in a backward state. They will not advance to any level of usefulness for several millennia. Their own people kill and steal from one another, each inhabitant living as a separate entity. Their regions are divided and have waged war against one another. How is this possible? Glooby demanded, incredulous. How can any race be so primitive? They believe themselves to be independent and isolated, apart from the rest of the universe. They're not even aware that other planetary races exist. They know only themselves. Thus, they fight amongst themselves for dominance to see who will rule the planet or a certain portion of it. Commander Glooby stared back at the scout, dumbfounded. We must accept your report as truth, he thought to Newbie, but it is hard to imagine a planet so disorganized, so ignorant that they cannot serve as proper slaves. To imagine a cannibalistic planet that actually destroys its own instead of uniting its military might to conquer other races? If you are not our most qualified scout, I would think you delusional. Newbie extended his antennae in a show of submission. I am the Giblet's most reliable scout and have provided full details on our new outpost, the planet of Earth. Glooby's entire form quivered with annoyance, then finally relented. All right, I admit, that is fun to say. He bent toward Glooby, their heads touching as they harmonized their thoughts. Earth, they hummed inwardly, their antennae tingling with anticipation. The blue ball, swirled with streaks of white, appeared before them. Good morning, Earth, Newbie thought happily. The stars say hello. Quiet, Commander Glooby ordered. We must focus now. Newbie made a rapid approach so as to avoid any possible detection by their antiquated technology and curved around to the dark side of the planet. Their cruiser broke through the planet's white fluffs of cloud and descended through the night sky. Commander Glooby's antennae sprang up, sensing the vibrations in the terrain below to gauge the size and shapes of the various mountains, valleys, and plains. Their silent ship went unnoticed as it sliced through the air, soaring over broad fields of food being cultivated by the inhabitants in strips of yellow, green, and brown. They continued on toward a poorly constructed dwelling, which Glooby sensed was contrived from the bark of the inhabitants' trees and painted a bright red color. Yes, Newbie confirmed, one of the inhabitants' dwellings. Isn't it remarkable? Glooby did not answer back. He was too astounded by the planet's lack of development. And look at their crop fields, Newbie added. I cut circles in it, the shape of our cruisers, so we'll have a convenient parking space. Thank you, that's very considerate, Glooby said, still marveling at the pathetic construction below. As they veered toward the red bark dwelling, a small piece of it, a makeshift door, swung open, and two creatures hurried out. These must be the fearful inhabitants, Glooby surmised. Again, Newbie confirmed his thoughts. Yes, those microbrains. The inhabitants, a tall, thin figure with a wide piece of gathered straw on its head, and a shorter, stockier figure with greater energy, perhaps a youth, came running toward the cruiser. The tall figure had a long metal rod in his hand, apparently an oddly shaped farming tool. The tall figure stopped suddenly and leaned back, putting one end of the metal rod near its head, resting it against himself. Something exploded across the cruiser's frontal shield. What on Giblet? Glooby sputtered. Newbie communicated nothing but confusion. I don't understand what happened, he said, as he forced the cruiser up into the air to avoid collision with the dwelling, having temporarily lost his perspective on the planet's surface. The bubble-shaped cruiser curved through the clouds and arched down at the two creatures once more. Commander Glooby watched the inhabitants, his antennae rising to sense the presence of any other creatures forming an army nearby. There was no one. The two creatures were alone. Glooby bore down on them with the cruiser. Now they will retreat, Newbie promised. Just watch. Glooby did watch, but the creatures did not retreat. Glooby sensed his scout's astonishment as the taller creature brought his metal rod up to his head once again and aimed it up at their ship. A ringing sound was heard as pieces of hard material tore across the saucer's outer hull. It's a gun, Glooby thought in alarm. He's firing his weapon at us. Their weapons are insignificant, Newbie insisted. They are too weak to harm us. I have confirmed it. You have confirmed it, Glooby sneered in disgust. You claimed they were unaware of other races. You said they were like a nest of eggs ready to be plucked. But this creature knew. How much more of your information is faulty? None. I can't explain this man's knowledge. Somehow he must have known we were coming, the commander finished his unexpressed thought. Newbie tried to imagine any way that the farmer could have been warned about the giblet attack. It was impossible. Glooby sensed his scout's struggling thoughts and knew he was now questioning his own report. If this simple creature knows, the planet's leaders will be even more prepared with weapons that your report overlooked. No need to panic, Newbie insisted. There must be some logical explanation. Yes, Glooby's antennae bellowed. You are inept. That is the explanation. We will abort. No, Newbie protested. We need more space, and their atmosphere suits us. This planet is ripe for the taking. We will look elsewhere, further on. This primitive planet of yours is too hostile, too dangerous, and completely unpredictable. Who knows what might await us if we landed? We are returning home. The decision was made. Newbie said nothing. The giblets were an impulsive race, prone to quick decisions and immediate action, but superiors were to be obeyed with no questions asked. The bubbling cruiser left Earth's atmosphere. Daddy! It's all right, Jimmy, Warren assured his son. They're gone now. Maybe they'll even think twice before coming back, at least to this part. Like we knew about them, huh, Pa? Jimmy said, trying to sound brave as he hugged his father to hide his tears. Yep, Warren answered. You did a good thing telling me about the warning. We can just thank God for our modern technology. Saved our lives. Sure did. Don't know what would have happened without the modern miracle of radio. Warren looked off toward the east. Look, son, you can almost see the glow of the fires in New York City. Behind them in the house, the tall wooden box with round knobs and a curved top continued to speak. The thick-jowled man communicating through the device could not be seen and had not yet been recognized by Warren or his 8-year-old son. Even as the man revealed his identity, Warren and Jimmy remained unaware as they stood outside on the lawn. This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen, the radio announcer said to the empty living room. Out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Outside, Warren drew his son close as they watched the clouds through which the alien craft had departed. Yes, sir, Warren said, masking his own fear to comfort his son. Them Martians sure picked the wrong night to invade this planet.